Fjords of the World, written by Edward Allen Kurtz. Contents at a glance. What is a fjord? A fjord is like a bay. It is a long, narrow inlet of water from an ocean or sea. A fjord has steep sides that rise up from the surface of the water. The word fjord comes from Norwegian, the language of Norway, the home of many incredible fjords. But Norway is not the only country that has fjords. Fjords are found along the coastlines of Alaska, British Columbia, Chile, Greenland, and Iceland. The word fjord is sometimes spelled as fjord, especially in New Zealand. Let's learn more about fjords. Fjords and bays. What is the difference between a fjord and a bay? A fjord is a type of bay, but a very special type. A bay is a body of water that is partially surrounded by land and is connected to a lake or an ocean. What makes a fjord special is that the valley walls of a fjord are very steep. The water is deep and the valley is long and narrow. The place where the fjord opens into an ocean is called the mouth. It is often shallower than the other parts of the fjord. If the body of water is wider than it is long, then it is a bay, not a fjord. How fjords are formed. Part 1. One word: glaciers. Bays can be formed in other ways, but fjords are formed by glaciers. Glaciers are very heavy and powerful masses of snow and ice. Over long periods of time, they move because of gravity. When they move, they are strong enough to change the landscape. In the case of a fjord, the glacier carves a valley in the shape of a U. The walls of the valley above the water are steep, but so are the walls below the valley. This is what makes the water in a fjord so deep. The water in a fjord can be as deep as 4,200 feet. How fjords are formed. Part 2. As the glacier moves through the land, it erodes the bottom of the valley. But eventually, the glacier reaches the ocean. When the glacier disappears, the valley is flooded with seawater. The mouth of a fjord is not as deep as the water of the fjord further inland away from the sea. This is because when it first starts moving, the glacier is very heavy and cuts deeply down into the land. But by the time it reaches the sea, it is not as heavy and does not cut as deeply. The mouth of a fjord often contains rocks and sand. Coral reefs. When you think of where coral reefs are found, what comes to your mind? The Great Barrier Reef of Australia? Hawaii? The Caribbean Sea? How about Norway? Cold Norway in Scandinavia? It's true. In the year 2000, coral reefs were discovered at the bottoms of some fjords in Norway. There are anemones, corals, fish, and even some kinds of sharks that live in these fjords. These animals have learned to live where it's very dark and the water pressure is high. There are also coral reefs in New Zealand's fjords. What is a skerry? The word Skerry comes from an old Norwegian word. It means a rock in the sea. It is a small rocky island, and it is usually too small to be a place where people can live. It can also be called a sea stack. Like fjords, skerries are created by glaciers and are often found at the place where a fjord meets the sea. In some places, like in Norway, there are thousands of skerries near fjords. It's hard for big ships to sail around them, but skerries offer protection to fjords. This is why fjords are calm and make good harbors. The biggest fjord in the world, Scoresby Sund. Scoresby Sund is the biggest fjord in the world. It is found on the Greenland Sea on the eastern coast of Greenland, which is the biggest island in the world. Scoresby Sund is also the longest fjord in the world. It covers an area of almost 15,000 square miles, and it is over 200 miles long. There are many islands in this fjord. The largest island is called Milne Land. The climate in Scoresby Sund is Arctic. The winters are long and cold. Some animals that live here include the Arctic fox, the musk ox, and lots of birds and fish. The deepest fjord in the world, Skelton Inlet. The deepest fjord in the world is found in the southern hemisphere at the bottom of the world. Can you guess which continent this is? Skelton Inlet is located in Antarctica. It is filled with ice and sits at the end of the Skelton Glacier. This is a glacier located along the western edge of the Ross Ice Shelf. Where Skelton Inlet meets the sea, it is about 5,000 feet deep, but further inland, it is over 6,000 feet deep. It was named after an officer in the British Royal Navy, Reginald Skelton, who helped to discover the inlet about 100 years ago. The narrowest fjord in the world, Naeroy Fjord. Naeroy Fjord is the narrowest fjord in the world, and it is found in western Norway. It is part of a larger fjord called Enseñe Fjord. Naeroy Fjord is 11 miles long but only 1,600 feet wide in some places. Because of this, many people come to see this interesting fjord. It can be visited by boat, by kayak, or by walking around the surrounding mountains and valleys. The mountains are about 4,500 feet high, and the views of the fjord are amazing. There are also waterfalls in this fjord. Sometimes during the winter, it is covered with ice. Famous fjords, Aidem Fjord. Patagonia is the name of a large area at the southern tip of the continent of South America. There are two countries that share this huge area, Argentina and Chile. Aidem Fjord is found in the Aidem region of southern Chile, where glaciers formed fjords, channels, and lakes over many years in the past. Aidem Fjord stretches east for more than 40 miles from the Moralita Channel, where there are many skerries. The Aidem River empties into the Aidem Fjord. It is connected to the Pacific Ocean by the Darwin Channel. Famous fjords, Geiranger Fjord. Norway is famous for its fjords, and it has many very beautiful examples. Some people think that Geiranger Fjord is the best fjord in Norway. It is a popular place to visit. 130 cruise ships visit it every year. It is about 10 miles long. The fjord is surrounded by snow-covered mountain peaks, and there are many waterfalls like the famous Seven Sisters waterfall. The forests around the fjord are dark green, and the color of the water is deep blue. There is a village at the end of Geiranger Fjord where a river drains into it. Famous fjords, Kenai Fjords. Kenai Fjords are part of the Kenai Fjords National Park, located on the Kenai Peninsula in south-central Alaska near the town of Seward, and about 130 miles south of Anchorage. It is a huge park, almost 670,000 acres. The landscape here is amazing. There are 38 glaciers flowing between beautiful mountains down to the sea. The biggest fjords are Ilike Bay, Harris Bay, McCarty Fjord, and Nuka Bay. Some of the fjords are a mile long. There are lots of animals that live here, including bears, moose, seals, and whales. Famous fjords, Milford Sound. Milford Sound is a fjord that is located in Fiordland National Park on the South Island of New Zealand. It is one of the most visited places in New Zealand because of its beauty. Milford Sound is about 10 miles long, and its mouth is on the Tasman Sea, which lies between New Zealand and Australia. Milford Sound has high mountains like the Elephant and the Lion, dark blue water, incredible waterfalls like Lady Bowen Falls and Stirling Falls, and plenty of wildlife like dolphins, penguins, seals, and even whales. Interesting facts. Scientists don't know as much about the coral reefs and fjords as they do about tropical coral reefs. Misty fjords in Alaska cannot be reached by big cruise ships, so people use kayaks to visit it. There are many skerries along the fjords in Scandinavia, but there are also skerries in the states of Alaska and Washington in the United States. Although Milford Sound is the most popular fjord to visit in New Zealand, Doubtful Sound, also in New Zealand, is a fjord that is 3 times longer and 10 times bigger than Milford Sound. After Scoresby Sund in Greenland, the next 2 biggest fjords in the world are Naeroy Fjord in Canada and Enseñe Fjord in Norway. The oil tanker called the Exxon Valdez grounded in 1989 in the Kenai Fjords National Park caused a large oil spill which endangered the wildlife in the park. Puget Sound in the state of Washington is made up of many fjords. The Gulf Stream helps to keep the climate mild along the Norwegian fjords. There are freshwater fjords in the Great Lakes in North America. Loch Moran in Scotland is a fjord that does not connect to the sea. Howe Sound near Vancouver, British Columbia is the southernmost fjord in North America. American President Jimmy Carter made Kenai Fjords a national park in 1978. Many people enjoy fishing for salmon in Geiranger Fjord in Norway.